Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new malicious compliance content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, "Would you like some coffee?" Some background context. My girlfriend has a personality of an angry chihuahua sometimes. She'll be petty about something out of nowhere, but she doesn't know how petty I can be. One day I was rushing out after work to go to the gym. I was kind of pressed for time, so I thought I'd make myself an espresso shot as a pick-me-up before I headed out. I usually offer to make her one when I make one for myself, but it was late in the evening, so I didn't know if she would have wanted one because it might keep her from sleeping. Plus, she was just chilling in the next room. Plus, I wanted to get to the gym. Yes, I still felt bad for not asking her, but that's beside the point. Make my Nespresso, down it, and started heading towards the door. Her, "Wait, you made a coffee and didn't offer me any." Me, "Yeah, I have to get to the gym." Her, "I thought you'd have offered to make me one too. The least you could have done is ask. Just you then." I do me and head to the gym. Get home from the gym. She's conveniently takes her last sip of coffee, probably waiting for me to walk in to make a point lol. Still upset about it. So I said, okay, I'll ask her if she wants coffee next time instead of assuming. Next morning comes. We usually go to the gym together in the mornings, but she loves to sleep in sometimes, and today was one of those times. I decided to go out on my own, but as routine, make my Nespresso. Cue malicious compliance. I run back towards the bedroom where she's all snuggled up. Me, but B, her sprinting up straight, still half asleep. What's going on? Me, I'm making coffee. Do you want any? We had a good laugh. She went back to bed. I went on my way. Next one is titled, "You Can't Get Quarters from Bug Bites." When I was in the Army, my unit had a training day one day where we did tactical movements and close quarters combat with paintball guns. It was pretty fun. Except it was in Texas, in the middle of summer, in a training area full of tall grass that I ended up crawling around in a lot. I didn't notice any problems until a couple hours later when I was getting ready to head home and my legs started burning. I pulled my boots off and I rolled my pants up in my feet, and legs up to my mid-thigh were swollen and covered in hundreds of angry red welts. Apparently I'd crawled through a nest of chiggers, tiny biting bugs common in America that are apparently called trombiculidæ officially, and they'd gone to town on my legs, bad enough to provoke an allergic reaction. I drive myself to the emergency room at the base hospital, and while I'm waiting to be seen and feeling more and more terrible but needing to focus on something else, I started counting the bites. I stopped when I got to 100, and that was just on the inside of my right calf. The doc had never seen anything like it, and I ended up getting a massive dose of steroids, antibiotics, and inflammatories, all hospital grade and with serious side effects of their own, as well as 4 days of quarters, the military equivalent of being told to stay home and don't come into work. My girlfriend came and picked me up from the hospital and drove me home because at that point I was in no state to drive myself between the allergic reaction and the meds I was on to treat it. On the way home, I call my sergeant to let him know about my situation so he can get word up the chain of command. About an hour after that, I get a call from the first sergeant, the senior-most NCO in the unit herself. Now, she was one of the most incompetent first sergeants I ever worked with during my time in the Army. Constantly making terrible decision, mindlessly green lighting whatever terrible decision our equally incompetent captain came up with, and micromanaging people unnecessarily. She told me that my quarters has been revoked by the captain and that I have to come in the following day. I tell her that I'm holding orders in my hand from a doctor who's also a lieutenant colonel that I'm supposed to take time off to recover. She responds with, "You can't get quarters from bug bites," and rants at me that I'm just malingering and trying to get out of work. There was no way I could possibly seriously ill from just some bug bites. I tried to explain that I'd had an allergic reaction, but she wasn't having it, insisting I was a liar and a bad soldier because of it. I was to be at formation the next morning at 9. Because of the extensive exercise we all got at the training event, they'd canceled PT for the day, with my supposed quarters slip, and they would decide then if they were going to punish me more for trying to pull this stunt. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, I wore my PT uniform, a t-shirt and shorts, rather than our fatigues the next day, and had my girlfriend drive me in. I was still too messed up from the bites and meds to drive. I figured if I was going to get in trouble anyways, Being in the wrong uniform would be the least of my worries. But my bare legs instead showed off the literal hundreds of now angrily red, almost purple or black in some cases, huge welts on my legs. The skin was more whelped than not by the next morning, and I walked up showing off that rather horrific sight to my entire company of more than 100 enlisted, NCOs, and officers. Literally everyone who sees me is like Jesus ducking Christ, Quester SA. What the duck happened to your legs? It's clear to every single person in the company that I am actually legitimately having an allergic reaction just by sight alone. The first sergeant hears people making a ruckus, sees me, and turns bright red, knowing she sucked up when she hears me answering warrant officers, including my direct supervisor, asking, "Why are you here if you're that sick?" With first sergeant made me come in and told me that you can't get quarters because of bug bites. Within 10 minutes, I'd handed in a copy of my quarters slip, gotten a quiet and very private apology from the first sergeant, and was sent home for the next 4 days. Next one is titled, "My neighbors wanted to call a professional to mark their property line. My parents agreed." This was a long time ago, but I remember it clearly. We moved into a community with tight space in between our house and our neighbors, and we didn't like them being able to see into our kitchen. We put up a bunch of plants, costing thousands, but my parents thought it would be worth it. A week later, my parents awoke to the plants completely chopped down. My father was furious and marched down to our neighbor's house. He told my father the plants were on his property line, therefore he had total right to take them down. He warned that if anything were to go on his property again, he would report us to the authorities immediately. Later that day, my father called the company that put in the plants, and with the warranty we could have them replanted next week for no charge. We made sure there was no way it was on our neighbor's property. However, a few days later, we caught him chopping them down at 2 a.m. We called the police upon obstruction of property, and after a chat with my neighbor, he decided to call a professional and marked his property line. My father agreed. A few days later, I got home to find orange tape in my neighbor's yard. Apparently, his fence was 11 feet over our property line. We watched as he took down his fence, completely furious. Within the next month, we were enjoying our new space and privacy in our backyard, and my neighbor ended up losing 1/4 of his backyard. My neighbor ended up having to pay almost $10K for the destruction of our property, and we got to plant our plants again. Next one is titled, "You Don't Have Any? Well, can you check in the back?" This story is from years ago when I was the assistant to the retail manager of a small mom-and-pop swimming pool supply store. One of the many aspects of my job was inventory management. I did the ordering, and I would frequently audit the stock to see what was low, what we had, and make any adjustments in our computer for stuff that broke, was taken by our service department, expired, etc. I also had the displeasure of dealing with customers. It was the middle of summer, and as you might guess, it's the busy season for pools. I would typically work 60+ hours a week, with 1 day off. Frequently, that day off would be a Sunday one week, then I wouldn't get another until the following Friday. So you can imagine that sometimes my patience was thin. The store is hectic and busy when a customer comes in looking for something, specifically what I don't remember, but we had none on the shelf. I apologetically told them we were out. Then they hit me with the classic, "Well, can you check in the back?" Remember when I said I was in charge of inventory? I knew we had none, and I told them I was sure we didn't have any. "Well, can you check anyway?" Cue malicious compliance. I put on my best customer service smile and say, "Sure, I'll be back in a few minutes." So I mosey on back to the stockroom, knowing full well it's not there. I take my time and stroll through the stock, catch my breath from the business of the floor, and enjoy the peace and quiet of the stockroom where there are no customers for a little bit. Then I head back into the chaos of the store and smile apologetically again to the customer. "No, sorry, there's none back there." The customer thanked me for checking and left disappointed, but at least I got a couple minutes to myself. Next one is titled, "Hired me for one job and made me work another." Truly, it was their pockets that hurt in the end. For all of my life, I bought, collected, and sold luxury fashion as a hobby. After all of these years, I know my stuff. I'm not rich by any means, hence why I get everything used. I remember I got hired at a thrift store once as a clothing pricer, because before I volunteered to do this at charity thrift stores trying to pad their bottom line, money being used for the community. These people ended up having me do a completely different job that I had no idea how to do. I priced children's toys instead. Even though I wanted to be in clothes, they just wouldn't let me, even though that's what they hired me for. Would always get mad when I tried to put them in the right direction about clothes. My boss kept joking about having sex with me too. So I enacted a bit of malicious compliance because I let them put someone's entire Escada collection out on the racks for about $3 per garment and didn't say a word. They lost a whole week's profit because if they would have had me work the job I was supposed to, all of it would have auctioned off for thousands of dollars online. I quit the day after. Next one is titled, Radio Gaga. Rank structure for context. We have 2 sections in the warehouse. Peter runs the top end and Greg runs my end. Both have a 2IC. Dean is the manager for the whole warehouse. We communicate with handheld radios across the warehouse. Occasionally, I would make funny noises over the radio or play little jokes. For example, if someone was asking to borrow a forklift, I would get on the radio and respond with "No, leave me alone." Or when someone was asking, "Who is X/Y forklift?" I would respond with "Yo mama." Relatively harmless stuff. This apparently made Peter's blood boil. He warned me that he would go to Dean if it continued, so I stopped and had intended for that to be the end of it. The following morning, Dean tracked me down and had a chat with me about it anyway. I found out from somebody else that Peter had already gone to Dean before I was even warned. This pissed me off a bit, so I decided to maliciously comply with the instructions I was given from Dean. Dean's exact words were, "I don't mind if you have a bit of a joke every now and then towards the end of the day if there are no customers around." So although I had intended to stop entirely, I now had an exact set of rules to follow if I wished to continue. So past 5 o'clock, if no customers are around, I have been telling awful dad jokes and making fart noises over the radio. Peter tried to reprimand me on the first few instances, to which I reiterated what Dean had told me. For the past week and a bit I have been happily joking away, knowing that Peter can do nothing about it, and it makes him very angry. Sorry Peter, you dug your own grave. Last one is titled, Absolutely Mr. Neighbor. I have a neighbor who is a bit of a troublemaker. A bit of a backstreet. He has 4 cars and often parks them all on the street, completely filling the street in front of his and my house. When he isn't working on his car with their wrenches or washing them, he is probably idling his tow truck. Oh yeah? He has a tow truck too, just rumbling away outside of my house. People are constantly coming and going from his house, likely for illicit reasons, but no way to prove that. There was a period where the police were at his house multiple times a week about 2 years ago, but that has subsided to once every couple months. He lives with his grandmother, who is immobile, and you no longer see her anymore except when the ambulance comes and takes her to the hospital alone. Last week, when I was walking out of my house to take my son to daycare, he came stomping across the street and started to be all buddy-buddy with me, so I immediately knew something was up. He asked if we can keep my dog, a German Shepherd, inside in the morning until 7:00 a.m. because he is tired of her waking him up. She is a shepherd, she barks. We limit it as best we can, but a dog is going to dog. I say sure, and continue buckling in my kid. He then continues on and says to not take pictures of him or at his house. I point to the camera overhead, which is oriented in a way to see my front door, driveway, and his house. I put it up to keep an eye on him and my property since he has a hot head and I don't trust him to not do something stupid. Then to take the cake, he told me to stop following his wife and explained that she said I followed her home multiple times. I explained to him that I lived across the street. From time to time, we will both be coming home at the same time and that I have better things to do than park a mile away from home to follow her home. So for the malicious compliance, it comes back to keeping my dog inside until 7:00 a.m. so he can get his much-needed beauty sleep. Now, instead of leaving her dog door unlocked at night and her going out in the morning when she wakes up, usually around when we wake up at 6:30 a.m., we lock it at night and unlock it on the nose at 7 a.m. But at 7 a.m. when I let her out, I tell her to speak for about 5 minutes. More often than not, she'd go out in the morning, pee, and come back in with no one any the wiser. Not anymore. Now she goes out and barks up a storm for a few minutes. Woof, woof, woof. Edit, for future readers who still think my neighbor is a saint. The cops were called on him yesterday for threatening to run over the kids who play basketball in the street because their ball rolls on his yard sometimes. Thanks for listening.